JD.
Good morning, Pastor Jim.
Pastor Jim.
Good morning, Jim.
That sounded fancy. Hey, so it's Monday, and welcome to Monday Matters, where what happens on Sunday?
It matters on Monday.
That's right.
And that's what this podcast is about, is just talking about, what we talked about on Sunday, what happened on Sunday, and how it applies to our daily lives.
Absolutely.
Going a little bit deeper.
Beautiful. And so usually we'll look at a sermon that we've both worked on and kind of talk through and kind of the process of that. But this Sunday, we had a guest speaker.
We did.
So,
yeah.
Patrick Nachtigall and Jamie Nachtigall. And they are missionaries to Europe. They've been over all of Europe, and now they are heading back on assignment after a year of being in the States raising funds, and they're going to be in Italy now.
Wow.
So,
can you give a little history about how they've been involved with Blue Mountain Community Church for so long?
Sure. Jamie actually has family here in the church.
Wow.
And so when she was a kid, they would go to camp, and she would always go with our youth group. So, there's that connection that they have, or she has family here. And so that's kind of part of the history there. And so when they come here, they kind of feel like they're coming home, mostly because it's, she's just been here really forever. What she said was her entire life, she's had a connection here with the church. So, there is that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And we got to hear them talk. And it was a great message. It was extremely profound. And so for those of you who didn't watch the message, do you have a few notes on what it was about?
Yeah. I mean, wow.
And I don't have notes, so I can tell you what I thought, but I would trust your writing more than my thoughts.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, I'll say some things and you dive in as we go, but, Patrick started talking about, a little bit about the situation in Ukraine and how, this is an incredible disaster on many, many fronts. And I actually had lunch with them afterward, and so I might fill in a little bit of that with some of that lunch that we had too. But we have churches. So, and he didn't talk about this really at that point. And the last time I talked about our churches in Ukraine, I said we have 8. What he told me is now we have 11.
Wow.
So there's been some expansion, although many of those churches are in kind of in flight right now in terms of people who are trying to escape and trying to find safety and that kind of thing. So we don't know really what the end result is. Their ministry, the European missionaries are everything is kind of revolving around trying to manage this crisis. Yeah. And one of the other things he was saying was, this is not during the message, but he was telling me at lunch that the Ukrainian churches and the Russian churches, because we have a few Russian churches too, there was a real tight network between them, and he said that network is pretty broken at this point.
Really?
There's distrust even in the churches because the propaganda in Russia is very, very different than the message that Ukrainians are getting. So it's just a tremendously broken time.
Yeah, and I know he talked a lot about that propaganda and how what's being said, and it can be on social media, it can be on our news networks, it can be quite literally all of the information that we get when it comes to these types of conflicts. What he was talking about is how it teaches us to hate, or not teaches us to hate because we hate naturally, but how it fosters that hate so that it grows and it spirals out of control. One of the illustrations that really jumped out to me was how he was talking about a study. I believe he said it was in Stanford or something, where they attached electrodes to people's, different spots of people's brains.
Right.
And some of them would be pleasure, laughter, sexual pleasure, happiness, joy. But the one that people got most addicted to, the one that people pressed the most, was outrage.
Right.
And to me, that was incredibly interesting because it feels like we live in this society that's continually outraged, and it's getting worse and worse. Like, people just seem more mad now than they did 10 years ago. But interesting enough that people actually like feeling mad. They feel vindicated by feeling mad, and how all of the media, everything that we consume, all the information we consume, all the propaganda is built to make us more mad because that's what gets us hooked.
Right.
It's incredibly interesting.
And it's as addictive, according to him, And according to this study, it says addictive as a drug on some level. Yeah. Hey, did you, by the way, did you see any news this morning about last night's, was it Emmys or Grammys?
I did, about Will Smith
Yeah.
slapping Chris Rock. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. You talk about outrage. You know, Chris Rock makes a joke and it could have been out of taste. I don't know. But Will Smith thought it was, and he got up and he walks over and slaps Chris Rock across the face.
And part of the reason that that's so popular, like it's literally everywhere now,
Right.
every news network, is because, you know, some of us will identify with Will, some of us will identify with Chris, and then there's anger on both sides. Who is right?
Right.
You know, partially it's shocking, but at the same time, we also like feeling angry at one of the two parties. And well, that was terrible what he did, regardless of who he is, you know, regardless of which side you're on. Yeah, that was crazy watching that.
Yeah. So, I mean, our fuses are so short.
They are.
That we can't even, take a joke or sit. I mean, to get up and
whose side are you on?
Physically
in the whole?
assault somebody in front of the world.
Yeah.
Whose side am I on?
Yeah, I think Will was out of line.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's my perspective. I don't think Chris. I think Will was completely out of line. What do you think? Yeah.
I mean, assaulting somebody like that. I mean, yeah. That was way out of line. In fact, I can't imagine. Say I'm preaching, and someone gets up and comes up and slaps me. I mean, I'd be like, security.
Would you have the composure to go on? Do you think?
I don't think so. I don't think so. No. In fact, when you think about that, and this is not what the sermon was. Actually, it is what the sermon was about.
Yeah.
When you think about it, but to have composure after being assaulted, because it wasn't just a little slap. It wasn't
It was
like
a big slap.
like hitting you with gloves and challenging you to a duel afterward or something.
Yeah.
It was a big old slap. Yeah. Yeah, that was, but that's indicative of where we are as a culture right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that we feed on, that we latch on to, is that kind of hate, that kind of violence. It's, and that's really what Patrick was talking about. What was sort of the message that he was trying to draw out of it? So that's sort of the problem, what's going on. But what's sort of the solution?
Well, wow, that's fast. So, he was talking. Well, I mean, you're
I was
already
like, let's keep digging
you're ready
into
to the
it. We
solution.
don't have to go to this.
No, it's good. One of the things that both of them talk. Well, actually, Patrick said it out loud, but they've noticed in their time away from the United States, and now they've come back, just how divided we are as a nation, and how this. This thing, and so they built that out. It was nice. Then they said this isn't the first time this has happened, and they looked at this passage in Luke chapter 9, verse 51 through 56. How
That's why it's good why you brought your notes, because I remember the story, but I do not remember the passage.
right. So
do you know anyone like that can just give you a Bible chapter and verse just like that? You do? Are you like that?
No, that's not me.
That's like, I'm not like that.
I had a professor. He was brilliant in seminary, and this is a wayside story. I don't know how you get me there, but his name was James Earl Massey, and
has he written books before?
Oh yeah, he's written. You may have heard his name.
I think I have.
Yeah, super. Brilliant guy. He had this memory that just photographic type memory. And one day, I mean, we would go in and he would just quote passage after passage after passage, and lengthy. And one day he got it wrong, and we all looked at because we're reading it and he got something wrong. We all start looking at each other like, what just happened? And then he turns around and says, "Gotcha." Sorry, I just laughed kind of loud, but he said, "Gotcha." And so
that's funny.
That was really funny. Dehumanization. Yeah, so he talked about how the disciples were ready to call down fire from heaven on the Samaritans, and it's just kind of where we are. One of the things, though, that he said was, if you're not growing in
love,
grace and patience, right?
Yeah, I heard love, grace, and not being judgmental.
Yeah, all right. Well, my notes say...
I would trust your notes over what I tell. Hey.
If you're not growing in grace and patience with other people, this might not be the religion for you. Wow. What do you think of that statement?
I thought that it was great, because at least what I've seen and what I've experienced, and he really dug into that, the fact that if you are a Christian, if you are following Jesus, we should not be judgmental. We should not be fostering this kind of hate. But what I loved is how hard-handed he was, because it's true. And like when Jesus rebuked the disciples, like that word for rebuke is very, very strong. It's like Jesus is like, nope, you are completely wrong. And that's the same. That's exactly what Patrick was doing. This is not the religion for you if you want to allow yourself to feel that kind of hate towards other people. I think that I don't know. I was, sitting in the pews like, yes, this is good. This is what we need. Because I don't know. I feel like we've grown as a religion, and so we're talking contextually right here, like the church in America. I feel like we have allowed that kind of hate to foster itself, and we've sort of been like, hey, it's okay to dislike the other side, but as long as we get along. But he's like, no, you can't even feel hate. Like you should not feel that way, and if you do feel that way, you're doing it wrong. Like you're just not following Jesus correctly.
You're doing it wrong. Yeah.
You're just doing it wrong. I don't know. I was just like, preach it, yes sir.
Yeah, and he talked about how, the Jewish religion of the time, you were allowed to hate, you were allowed to despise your enemy, and if they did something to you, you were allowed to, if they slap you, you slap them back, kind of thing. But Jesus' example is totally different. I mean, you're doing it wrong. I like the way you said that.
Well, and it's just hard because, and that's what a lot of the information, like I know on any of the, not like news outlets, but any of the information outlets you go to, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, anything that especially the younger generation is on, almost every single example of explicit Christian interaction with society is hateful, is negative. So it's Christians holding up signs, saying you're going to hell for having an abortion. Yeah. Christian holding up signs, God hates you if you're gay. A parent, this is a video I watched this morning. A son told his parents that they were atheists, and then the parent is just absolutely berating him, saying, you're not going to get any presents for Christmas. But literally like shaking the son. Wow. Like, we are going to church every Sunday until you're 18. It's completely hateful.
Right, because that works, right?
It totally works. And no, it doesn't work. But the funny thing is it does work because at least I think you rule people through fear that way, and people like feeling that hate. So if anything, I would say it works in the sense of polarization that, oh yeah, I like feeling hateful. Like deep down, we don't admit that, but we do like feeling hate towards someone else. And so that's why a lot of extremely political churches are thriving, is because they are preaching that message, but it doesn't truly work. I don't think it truly works getting to the core of the gospel, to following Jesus. So I'd say those people aren't Christians. They might claim Jesus in, title, they might claim him, in deed or whatever. But if you're fostering hate and your religion, your church is built off of, a disrespect for someone else that's different than you, a hate for them, you're just not Christian. Like that's not the definition of what it means. So,
yeah. So, we like to think of it maybe or justify it by saying it's righteous indignation. I'm standing on truth. But one of the things that Patrick said in the message was that, Jesus didn't try to correct the woman at the well. He didn't try to correct her theology. He just spoke to her with love and grace, and took her right where she was. That was great.
And it was great how he went on too, talking about how the way that they do missions is by going to the people that society has cast out and loves the least, and then loving them and not trying to correct them, like you said, like he was saying, not trying to correct them, but just loving them. And that is not a stereotype that Christians have. That's not something that we as Christians are known for, but it's something we should be known for. Yeah. We're known for casting out, all those groups like he was talking about. Christians are known for trying to stay away, for the whole city on the hill mentality that we are removed. We're not tainted by the world. That's why we do all of these things. But he's like, we should be the exact opposite. We should be completely in those situations with people that society has cast aside, and loving them with grace. I don't know. I just loved it.
Yeah. It was really good. It was really good. And it's an important reminder that following Christ looks nothing like trying to be right. It really looks like trying to love.
Yeah.
I mean, and I say trying to love. I mean, sometimes you might not feel that, but you step into it anyway, and the feeling is maybe they'll follow. But I thought it was great. If you didn't see it, I would encourage you to go back. It is there to watch. It was really.
And I really like what you said. Following Christ isn't about being right; it's about trying to love. Because the disciples followed Christ for years, and they're still trying to call down fire on the Samaritan town. Right. They were not right. The disciples got it wrong all the time. I mean, like pretty much the whole gospel of Mark is oriented around. It's Jesus rebuking the disciples. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong.
Right.
Thank goodness it's not about getting it right, because we don't get it right. It's about in trying to love, because we suck at loving a lot too. So growing in that process of loving. Yeah, I liked what you said there. You could put it on a Hallmark card.
Yeah, right. So one of the things he said was, the more we get the Spirit of God in us, the more we change. He also said, repent of viewing people as demons. Wow, that's pretty powerful stuff. And then he said, Jesus, he needs you to love. Wow, he needs you and I to love, whether they're people we agree with or not. In fact, agreement, we're not going to agree with anything, are we? I mean, you and I even disagree on a lot of stuff, but
we do.
But I love you.
Yeah. It's not about agreeing on everything, because at the end of the day, we're both wrong. At least most likely, we're both going to be wrong.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, great. Hey, listen, today was a little shorter. We didn't have the same experience, but I thought it was really good to hear from them and from what's going on in Ukraine, really from a missionary's perspective who's been over there and been boots on the ground. We'll hear more about that as they hear more about it.
And what you can do too is please pray. Pray for the Nachtigalls, pray for the churches that are there, pray for their ministry, pray for everything that's going on. Because that's one thing that I remember them requesting is prayer. And so let's continue to pray for them, because they're doing some amazing work.
Doing great stuff, yeah. And like I shared, and I don't know when you guys turned off the video feed, so up at Skyrocket, but one of the things I did share was that at the end of the service, when you give to the church here or Skyrocket, either one, a portion of that gift goes toward missionaries like the Nachtigalls and the various other missions we support. So.
Yeah, that's one thing that, because it's Skyrocket, we're trying to share the DNA through the message, through what's going on, but we haven't really explicitly sat down and lined it out. But before, sort of as a tiny intro said, hey, the last part of our DNA statement, the 8th bullet point that we have is that we are generous with the gifts that God has given us. And that, like you said, 10% of every dollar. So if you give $1 to Blue Mountain Community Church, you give $1 to Skyrocket Church, 10% of that goes to our mission partners, and they're one of our biggest ones.
That's right.
And that we are a missional church, constantly trying to give with the resources that God's given us. So
one of the things he said at lunch was that our partnership, Blue Mountain in particular, has been a partner with them for 20 years.
Wow.
And it has been one of their biggest supporters all those years. So
wow, that's incredible.
I was kind of proud of that.
Yeah.
And then he gave me the number, and I thought, we can up that.
We can do more.
Yeah, we can. Hey, listen, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week on Monday Matters.